Hey guys, this is Comic Uno, and today I'm doing the top 10 comic book Kickstarters of the month. And before I jump in, I do have a Kickstarter of my own. The Dancer, there's only a few more days left of this one. It is a dancer slash assassin, and when she was little, she witnessed her parents being murdered in front of her and never dealt with that trauma until now. I also do Kickstarter consulting from a PR angle, so if you're looking to up your game to make your page look more marketable and also to up your social media game, contact me in DMs or comments or email me, and we'll talk about some Kickstarter consulting. Now, jumping into the honorable mentions, because I do have a couple of friends that have Kickstarter campaigns and do not want to be biased, so let's jump into that. So the first honorable mention is Bloom Pretty, and this is from my good friends Brant and Lisa Fowler. Lisa actually writes this book. It's an all-female team, from the letterer to the writer to the artist to the editor, and I've seen this come to life for a couple of years now, and I'm just so happy to see it here. If you're a fantasy fan, if you want something a bit more mature, definitely go check this one out. The artwork is drop dead gorgeous, and I'm so excited to read the full comic. Now, moving on to my next honorable mention, which is Prison Witch. And this is the last volume of Prison Witch. Now, Pat Shand has built an empire of Kickstarters, spanning from Destiny New York to Prison Witch. And it's interesting to see him wrap up a story, because Destiny New York has been such a long-running graphic novel, empire as well. And it's interesting to see, maybe it's not short because they're all graphic novels, but to see this one land to volume 3 and get a finale, so making a trilogy, I'm interested to see how it's going to end up wrapping up. And I'm glad that Pat is doing things that are very long form, and then doing some one shots, and then doing something like a 3-act like this. So if you're a fan of Orange is the New Black and magic, go check this one out. Moving on to Yahwah The Adventurer, and one thing there's many things I love about this Kickstarter, but one thing that really gravitated me to this book is that I love the idea that the author is using African culture and wanting to tell the real Africa through these stories, and making it all ages, and making it a family story. And I really love the concept of the book, that you're also learning about culture as you're hearing this really fun adventure. And the artwork is so fun. I really, really love the style, the cartoony style of it. So go check out Yawa. Now, moving on to my last honorable mention, which is Lumberjacks. And if you're just looking for a cool superhero book, this is definitely should be one on up your alley. I know the whole Ace Blade franchise they're really building and having fun with the different types of stories you could tell, and kind of more of a shared universe aspect. So go check out Lumberjacks if you're interested in hearing more about the full universe of those titles. Now, moving into the top 10. Number 10 for me is House of Blood, Volume 1, and this is a horror anthology. I love anthologies. I'm a sucker for them on Kickstarter, and I love horror, so this is just a cool combination of that. And the art looked really good on the page, and, I just love seeing new creators on Kickstarter dip their feet into shared community projects like anthologies, because it brings a good community base here, because that's really what is the driving force of Kickstarter, which is why I think anthology is a great way for people to combine their fan bases and just help each other out. So I love that aspect. Moving on to number 9, speaking of horror, and that is The Kid and the Ripper graphic novel. And, they're serial killers and they're teaming up. I thought that was a really cool concept for a comic book. I've never really I don't know much about the Kid. I've heard some stuff about the Rippers, so I've never seen a story like this. It's interesting to see public domain type stories that, and even real life stories that you're allowed to use on Kickstarter, and seeing people do different angles of it. So obviously there's been stories about these characters, but to have kind of a crossover and of these real people is interesting as well. So I was like, oh, that's a cool slasher concept for a comic. Moving on to number 8, which is Drumsticks of Doom, issue 1. I am a sucker for music and comics. If you could marry those two, I will probably like your book. So it has to do with heavy metal. So it's a heavy metal opera. I thought the art looked pretty edgy, and I was just kind of sucked by the concept of that. Moving on to number 7, which is Faded Away Volume 1. Another thing I really love about Kickstarter is when we get to see webcomics or webtoons having the opportunity to collect their books and maybe go to a more traditional fan base through Kickstarter. People that want to get a physical copy of a webcomic. And this is like a manga style book about a guy who had a friend who disappeared, and, you know, when the friend disappears, there's a new girl that comes to town. So is that the same friend? Are they connected? So there's already a cool mystery. And yeah, like I said, I think it's just cool that they are publishing it physically now. Moving on to number 6, which is Caffeinated Hearts. This is a slice of life story. I think something that we don't get to see as much in the direct market, but is nice to see as a webtoon, webcomic, and in this regard, Kickstarter. And it has to do with coffee, a coffee slice of life. And I was like, oh, that's a really fun angle. So, you know, it's nice to have something fluffy in your reads, and that seems to really hit the nail on the head for that. So number 5 for me is Elsewhere Volume 3. Speaking of anthologies and community, this is about bringing the indie superhero community, which, you know, we have a handful on Kickstarter, but there's not a ton of superhero books there. There's usually a lot of different genres, a lot of other genres. So to see the superhero indie community come together, tell their own stories in one place, and, you know, bridging backers and bridging community together is always interesting. And I love what Unlikely Heroes of Studios is doing with that and all their other projects. So moving on to number 4, which is David Finch, Monday Night Draw Season 1 art book. So this is actually a YouTube live cast that David Finch does, a very famous artist from DC Comics and many other places, who has built his own community through YouTube and draws and does these sessions, which I think is so cool to connect to your audience in that way. And for David to do that with his art, I thought is interesting. So we actually get to see that he's doing a collection of art from those streams, and he's bringing a book with it. So I was like, oh, that's a cool way to use Kickstarter and his community to put out this product. So I thought that was a really interesting concept. So that is number 4. Moving on to number 3, which is Fell, Hounds, and We Love You. So Commander Rao was where I first saw Fell. But also one thing I love about Fell's work and just their presence on social media is just how grateful they are for Kickstarter and how helpful they are to other people and sharing other people's stuff and just how ingrained they are into Kickstarter. So that's one very big reason to back up this project, but also it just looks awesome. I like their art style. You know, we also sometimes get some queer stories through their stuff too, so I'm curious if this is going to be queer or not. So very excited to get this one in my hands. Moving on to number 2, which is Vampire Detective in Space, issue 1. And honestly, the title just says it all. There's so many different interesting genres there. You got vampires, you got detectives, and you got space. Like, how does that all come together? And the art looked really fun, and I was like, oh, this is just a cool concept that I've literally never seen. So I thought it was a very unique concept. Moving on to number 1, which is Super Best Friends, issues 1 through 2. And if you are a DC Comics fan, well, this is pretty much if Jimmy Olsen was in the modern world. And he follows this superhero, and we get to see their relationship through more of a social media lens. And I just thought that was a really cool concept. And obviously, you could just see how much Jason Inman loves comics and loves superheroes. And you just see that love bleed through this comic. And you should definitely go support this one. And that is my number 1 pick. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. This is Comic Uno. Like I said, go check out my Kickstarter. It only has a few more days left, and I will, of course, have another one of these next month. And let me know in the comments below what were your favorite Kickstarters of the month. Thank you guys, and I'll see you guys later. Bye.